Welcome to the My Brain, My Happiness podcast. My name is Joe, and on each episode, it is my goal to spread awareness on mental health. No, I'm not a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a medical doctor. I'm just a guy who has had a lifelong relationship with mental illness, specifically OCD. Together with you, I want to blow the roof off the stigma that comes with having a mental illness. You need to know you're not alone. I promise this podcast will be upbeat and positive. My goal with each episode is to make you understand that you don't have to take this on alone or in silence. Now let's change some lives. Hey everybody, welcome to My Brain, My Podcast. This is Joe coming to you from his basement in Connecticut. What you guys think about the new intro music? I thought the other one was just a little bit too long. Decided to find a shorter one, so I put that in there. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I want to talk a little bit about depression today and what it exactly means. I'm, like I said, not a therapist, not a psychiatrist. There's people who are way smarter than me in this, but I can tell you what I'm out here and I'm telling you my experiences with battling mental illness. And so my OCD causes depression, it causes anxiety, and so I feel like my depression and my anxiety are a cause of something else. So in my case, because of my OCD, that the depression is caused by that, right? And my anxiety is caused by that. There are a ton of people out there, especially now, since we have, it's been 4 years since we've come out of the pandemic, almost 5 at this point. But the results of what came out of that pandemic are still felt today by a lot of people. I'll give you an example. I work from home now, okay? My job is full-time remote. Now, I work for a company that was not full-time remote before the pandemic. I didn't work for them, but I do now. And one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest reasons for depression is not a quote unquote chemical balance, but it's influenced by our lives. 39% of people in this country say they don't feel close to not one person anymore. I mean, that's sad, right? Not feeling close to anybody. That's a lonely life. It is a lonely life. And every time that we just look at depression as a biological issue, that's just not fair. How many of you have been to your primary doctor saying you're sad or whatever, and they just prescribe you an antidepressant? And sure, an antidepressant is going to give you a little bit of relief. It's going to give you some temporary relief, but it never gets to the core reason of why you're depressed. That's why you need a therapist. That's why you need to talk to somebody. That's why you can't sit in silence, because if you do, you're just going to suffer. And yeah, I take medication, but I take medication for my obsessive compulsive disorder. Yes, it's an antidepressant, but it's a certain family of antidepressants that's known to treat OCD. My antidepressants have stopped my intrusive thoughts for the most part. I still battle with them every once in a while, but for the most part, it keeps my OCD under control. That's why I take medication. But if you just throw medication at everything, you don't solve anything. Because when you get depressed, depression is a human emotion that is you are feeling unsatisfied, or a need is not being met, and so you get depressed. Now, that's not in every case. I mean, some people are going to get depressed because there is a reason, right? Let's say you go through a breakup, or or something bad happens and you're depressed because of it. And you know that. You know the reason. So what what good is medication going to do if you're not in therapy talking that issue out and trying to figure out, how can I deal with this? How can I cope with this problem? That's how I look at it. Now, I would never be against medication. Do you know why? Because I take a handful of freaking pills every day for what I got. But I also believe that, I fought going on medication for a long time. I did. I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I felt like, I don't know what I felt like. It was so many years ago. I just felt like I was going to be, like my mind was going to be altered or something to that effect. But I just couldn't cope. I couldn't cope with my OCD. You're with OCD, you're asking an irrational person to think rationally, and it doesn't work. All right. But if you're depressed and you know what the reason is, you need to work on that. You need to talk that out. And if you decide to do that and get help, boom, you're in warrior mode. Someone who can face what's going on with them and be able to open up and talk about it and try to work through it rather than internalizing it is brave and strong. It takes some real internal fortitude to be able to say, I need help. It's a tough thing for someone to admit. And so, like I said, a lot of people will go to the doctors because they're sad or whatever, and they'll just throw a pill at it. And yeah, it'll give you some relief. But you have to figure out what that depression is coming from and what can you do to address it. If you know specifically, I'm depressed. Why am I depressed? Well, me and my girlfriend broke up, or me and my boyfriend broke up, and he or she was my everything. Well, you know what? You need to talk that out with somebody. And eventually, you're going to work past it. And you won't need to be on the medication. That's all I'm saying. And I also am saying that you should listen to your doctor. Don't come out here and say, don't go to your doctor and say, well, Joe, with the My Brain, My Happiness podcast, said, I don't need medication. We should do this or do that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that everybody doesn't need medication. The leading cause of depression right now, like I said, is loneliness in this country. And like I said, it is something that doesn't mean you have a chemical imbalance. 43.8 million adults are going to experience some kind of mental illness in their life. And does that mean 43.8 million people have a chemical imbalance? No, I don't believe that. But it is something that you should not be embarrassed to talk about. Get rid of the stigma. Stigma is the definition. It's a mark of disgrace. And it puts up barriers and prevents people from going to get help. You can't use a medical test to diagnose a mental illness because you can't see it. And people are a lot of times people are afraid that you're lazy or whatever, and they tell you to snap out of it because you're depressed, you don't want to do anything, and that's just bullshit. It's people who just don't know, right? They have made mental illness, they've portrayed it as this terrible thing in the news. Every time there is a school shooting, they talk about mental illness. I've had people tell me that anybody who's diagnosed with any kind of mental illness should be put in a mental institution, boom, and that'll solve our mass school shootings. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Seriously? That is your solution? So I have OCD. You want to put me in a mental institution because, you have mental illness, you're going to do something crazy. Fuck you. Seriously. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, you dumb fuck. Sorry. I digress. I digress. But when you hear the negativity that surrounds mental illness, they portray it on the news, they portray it in movies, it can impact everything in our lives. There's some medical insurance companies, medical providers, insurance companies that won't cover mental illness, or they'll cover like 5 sessions or something ridiculous like that. Yet, I don't know, you could have a chronic illness, need medication, let's say, cholesterol, they're going to cover it every time. Does that make sense? Mental health care works. Many people are successful in our world because they got help and they're winning their relationship with mental illness. They're they're warriors because they're getting help and they're fighting through it and they're doing what they got to do. We got to educate people. We got to change the misunderstanding. We got to put aside the feelings that you have about mental illness and just show empathy to people. Treat people with mental illness as people, and you possibly could save a life. This is Joe from My Brain, My Happiness. I want you all to have a great day. I love you, and peace.